Hello, SYNGAP-land. My name is Michael Graglia, and this is episode 92 of SYNGAP10, your 10-minute weekly briefing on everything you need to know about SYNGAP1. Today is Wednesday, February 8th, and today I'm coming to you from a hotel room where I'm at a meeting representing SYNGAP1 and telling a potential very important partner about us and explaining why they should work with us, which is why I'm in uniform. But I don't even have time to tell you about that meeting, and that might be a future episode. What I want to tell you about today, and I'm framing it up as like 10 reasons SYNGAP-land is hopeful and exciting today, because there's a lot of exciting news. First of all, last week, RegEl announced their CNS Pipeline, and SYNGAP1 was in it. The pipeline was SCN2A, which is Dravet, SCN2A, which is not surprising, and SYNGAP1, which is awesome. RegEl is a company that it basically takes two technologies, CRISPR-A and some regulatory elements, and puts them together. There's two genius postdocs, one from Ahitav's lab. Ahitav did a webinar for us. You should watch it. And that postdoc is Navneet. And then there's another postdoc out of the Bro, Jourdain. And those are sort of the two co-founders, along with Dr. Davinsky is behind this. It's just an amazing company. And basically, it's the fourth company involved in SYNGAP, the way I count publicly, because we had Stoke, we had Praxis, we have Dr. Ben Prosser doing a lot of work, and has said publicly he's working with Ionis, so I sort of count them. And now we have RegEl. Four companies with SYNGAP1 technology trying to figure out how to validate preclinical models and get us to clinical trials. That is incredibly exciting, and I want to publicly thank RegEl for choosing SYNGAP, and we look forward to working with you. Super exciting. Should have just done a whole episode, but I want to talk to RegEl and get the story a little bit before I regurgitate facts on this podcast. Then yesterday, the University of Pennsylvania announced a $25, not 2.5, $25 million grant to the END program. That's epilepsy and neurodevelopmental disorders. Very, very, very cool little name there. And they want to end these neurodevelopmental disorders. So the announcement went out yesterday. We put it on Twitter. I'll put a link in the show notes. And you got to understand, what's happening at Penn is really special, right? You have Dr. Ben Prosser, who's done a webinar for us. You should watch it. His daughter has STXBP1. He's been supported by a SYNGAP family as well. So he's working on SYNGAP and STXBP1. You have Dr. Liz Heller, who's an epigeneticist, who has a niece with SYNGAP1. That's public. And so she's working closely with Ben. And then you have Dr. Bev Davidson, who's one of the big players in the gene therapy space, working with both of them. And then and that's on the science side. And then on the clinical side, you have Dr. Ingo Helbig, and then you have Katie Helbig. Yes, they're related, who's an amazing genetics counselor. And then you have just a whole army of people working with them at Penn. So at Penn, you have a real dream team. And they were already killing it in terms of working with the resources they had. And now some very generous benefactor has given them $25 million to that program, to the END program, to move faster. And Ben has said publicly, we're going to start with Cure SYNGAP1 and Cure STXBP1, which were our Twitter handles, and then we're going to go onward. So huge congratulations to the team, and huge thanks to the donor, whoever you are, because that is a brilliant act of generosity that you couldn't have bet on a stronger team, and we are so happy. Now, this might not seem quite as important, but to me it is very important. Ingo, who is a leading pediatric neurologist and loves data, put out a little slide a little while ago with his little chart of genes and when they happened, and he finally just updated that and included SYNGAP1. I don't know if I've said this before, but if I haven't, good. If I have, whatever, it's worth looking at that incredible chart and seeing where SYNGAP is and seeing how early on in the progression we are. And I'm just so excited that Ingo is paying attention to SYNGAP, and this grant is really going to catalyze the resources of Penn to be working on SYNGAP1. And now you might ask, hey, Mike, well, are we done? Should we just close up shop? I mean, Penn's going to cure SYNGAP, right? Not so much, unfortunately, because yes, they already have technologies. If you listen to Ben's webinar, and they are going to move really fast. And the tight partnership between science and clinical, between Prosser and Helbig and with Heller and Davidson and everyone else in there is exceptional, and will allow them to move fast. But move where, right? Where they're going to move is a preclinical model that they test in various animals, and then they say, okay, let's put this in humans. And that's where things get tricky. Clinical trial design. We can have technologies. We can cure SYNGAP in animals, and we can still fail at clinical trials. Which brings me to piece of news number 4, Praxis. Yesterday, Praxis had an earnings call. You should pay attention when companies that are working on your genes have earnings call. There's a lot of fun facts in there. I don't have time to regurgitate them all. The links in the show notes, you should read it. But what you should know is that Praxis has a drug for essential tremor that will announce in a quarter. And if those announcements if they do well in that phase 2 trial, there will be a lot of interest and there will be, a lot of positivity and stock prices will go up and investors will give money and they will have money. If that drug doesn't do well, it's going to be a little bit rough. They also have 3 other drugs that are 2 for SCN2A, 1 in small molecule, 1 in ASO, and 1 generally, I think, for focal seizures that are all being talked about in that press release. And 2 fun facts there. 1, I didn't just say SYNGAP1. And 2, that's their focus this year. But we know SYNGAP1 is on their pipeline. So what does that mean for us? Well, it means that if they have a good year, they're probably working on it in background. And if they have a good year, they're going to get to it next year. But there's a lot of ifs there. There's a lot of clinical trials that are going to happen. And they say in that press release, they have about $100 million, which is about enough to get them to the beginning of next year. So I wish Praxis every success. There's a lot of incredible people there, and there's every reason to believe they're going to win. And life happens, and you can fail clinical trials. So back to what's going on at Penn. Every company that is preclinical is a shot on goal for us, and that goal is a clinical trial. And whether or not we get through, and you can screw up a clinical trial so many different ways, it's not funny. And not just you can screw them up, the FDA can screw them up, anyone can screw up a clinical trial. And so what we need to be focused on is how do we de-risk clinical trials as much as possible so that RegEl or Praxis or Stoke or Penn or Ionis or whomever, once they have a technology that works on improving the SYNGAP expression, gets through clinical trials. Do we know what to measure? Nah, not so much. Do we really understand the phenotype well enough? In kids, yeah, not in adults. Do we actually understand seizure progression? Kind of, not so much. So there is a lot of work to do. And let me tell you, having an organized, activated group of patients is critical. If companies don't, we are necessary but not sufficient, right? Which means if a company sees the patient community is just a hot, fragmented mess and nobody knows what's going on, they'll be like, next gene. But if they see patients who are showing up every day, who are signing up for Citizen, who are filling up the data banks, who are raising their hand, who are organized, who are wearing the same t-shirts, and who are like, work with us, they're like, oh yeah, we want to work on SYNGAP, right? So we are not done. We should be inspired. We should believe there is a way forward, and we should keep working to collaborate with incredible people like Dr. Helbig, Dr. Prosser, and all the people to get these drugs to clinical trials and then get them through clinical trials. That needs to be our mindset. We need to keep collaborating, keep working, and keep leading. Speaking of leading, we were one of the first rare disease groups to do our very own podcast. And a lot of people told me I was crazy 92 episodes ago, but here we are. But guess what? Ashley Fry, we are now probably the first rare disease group to have 2 podcasts. I did not stutter. Ashley Fry has started doing SYNGAP stories. So this is just me blathering into a microphone for 10 minutes trying to get you guys as much information as I can, if I can hold all the thoughts together. But Ashley is going to start doing interviews with families, with researchers, with partners. And I'm so grateful to Ashley for doing that. This is Ashley Fry, not Ashley Evans. Ashley Evans is my wife. Ashley Fry is Nathan's mom, SYNGAP mom, Mississippi. So Ashley Fry is going to start doing SYNGAP stories. And the first episode is up. It's just her talking about Nathan. And then there'll be more episodes. And I'm so excited about SYNGAP stories. I'm pretty confident it's going to be way more popular than this podcast, which is fine. The more people learn about SYNGAP, the more people can easily just press a button on their phone and hear our stories, the more likely they are to work with us. So thank you, Ashley, for launching SYNGAP stories. Go listen to that. Links in the show notes. Speaking of everything I just said we still need to work on, that's why we give grants, right? That's why we encourage researchers to come and solve problems that we have with SYNGAP. So grants are due on March 1st and September 1st. March 1st is coming soon. We have a blog up about it. We've been reminding people. I'm mentioning it here, links in the show notes. We give money to scientists to make sure they are working on SYNGAP, to fund their work, to allow them to hire postdocs, to get us closer to clinical trials, and then get us through clinical trials, right? So your fundraising really, really matters. And this is a great month to fundraise, by the way, because it's Rare Disease Month, and the last day of the month is Rare Disease Day. Why is the last day of February Rare Disease Day? Because it's the rarest day of the year. How cool is that? I read a blog about that. If you want to check it out, links in the show notes, number 7. Number 8, for us to give grants to scientists, we need families to raise money. Some families can raise a lot of money. Some families can raise $1,000, but guess what? And some families can only raise $500. It doesn't matter. When you take 500 plus 1,000 plus a little bit over here plus a little bit over there and you mash it all together, you're able to give 6-figure grants out. And if every family does what they can, we can make things happen. So there's 3 links in the show notes about ways you can and should raise money here at the beginning of the year. First of all, in February, we have a rare disease fundraiser. Simple link. Push it out. Share it with your friends. Every donation is matched up to the first $20,000. Please just use that link, encourage people to donate, tell them it's Rare Disease Day. If you wanted to set up a team and you like little runs, we're doing Sprint for SYNGAP in April. We are now on our 3rd, I think, Sprint for SYNGAP. I hope I got that right. It might be the 4th. I'm losing track. But we've had teams all over the country, North Carolina, Boston, California, everywhere. People are going on runs, set up a Sprint for SYNGAP team. We actually have a prize that we're going to give to one of the teams who clears a certain hurdle. There's a Riften adaptive bike in play, and where there's other smaller prizes and swag for people who do Sprint for SYNGAP. So if you want to just send out a link, Rare Disease Day link, that's 8A in the show notes. If you want to set up a team, Sprint for SYNGAP, that's 8B in the show notes. And if you're like, no, I'm a cyclist, I want to do something big, guess what? In partnership with the Orphan Disease Center at University of Pennsylvania, seat number 2, we have a team in the $1 Million Bike Ride, which is, again, a way to raise funds, and the first $30,000 there, I believe, is matched. So there's 3 ways that you as a family can do something as simple as sending a link to your friends, doing a little run, or doing a full-on bike ride. Whatever it is, do something and work with the SYNGAP Research Fund so that we can give more grants and get better prepared for clinical trials. Because it's all about trials. All these amazing therapies have to get through trials to get into our kids. That's the way the game is played. Speaking of clinical trials, we are getting ready for those trials. We've set up a clinical trials page on our website. There are actually 2 trials on there right now I want to flag for you. One of them is from a Takeda drug for LGS. So if you have an LGS patient who has drop seizures, go and check out that drug. I talked to the medical director there. It sounds pretty cool. And then there's also a trial enrolling from Longboard Pharmaceuticals. It's a 5-HTC inhibitor, I believe, which is pretty cool for seizures. So again, if you have convulsive seizures, like visible seizures, you can enroll for that. I don't believe there's an age limit. So please go to our clinical trials page, check those out, consider the Longboard or the Takeda trial. And then just to wrap up, since I'm already way over time, I want to mention 3 other things that are cool and worth your attention. First of all, congratulations to the Rett Syndrome Research Trust, which recently announced that they have a gene therapy that was just approved. It's real, guys. It's happening. People are getting approvals. People are getting through clinical trials. But remember, Rett syndrome has been around for decades. The amount of data, natural history study, clinical endpoints that are in place is much greater than SYNGAP. Because Rett Syndrome Research Trust is so much better than us? No, because they've been around. They've had like a 60s, 70s, 80s, like a half a century head start, right? You got to understand, these syndromes that have names, Dravet and Rett, right? What happened there is a Dr. Dravet or Dr. Rett saw patients with a certain phenotype, a certain presentation, described those patients, and then later someone was like, oh, Rett is caused by MECP2. Dravet is caused by SCN2A. Oh, interesting. Boom, boom, boom. We were the opposite. 1998, Dr. Huganier. There's this gene, it's called SYNGAP1, looks important. 2009, Dr. Michaud, Montreal. Hey, I just found some patients. They're all the same-ish, and they all have a SYNGAP mutation. Looks like SYNGAP causes this disease. We've only had patients since 2009. That was 14 years ago. So of course we're playing catch-up, and the way we play catch-up is we raise more money, we find more scientists, and we move faster because we're literally at the point where the science is over the clinical knowledge. I am less worried about having drugs that will work than I am about having enough clinical information to get through clinical trials, which is why, by the way, everybody should sign up for Citizen. If you haven't signed up for Citizen, you could be holding things up. No good reason not to sign up for Citizen. Congratulations to the Rett Syndrome Research Trust. That's amazing news. Rare Revolution Magazine. Just recently wrote something about siblings. That's in the UK. Check it out if you've got a SYNGAP sibling. It's a pretty good article. And then this is a little Easter egg for you guys. The Carville lab, and the lineage here is the Carville was a postdoc for Dr. Mefford. Dr. Mefford's an amazing geneticist who's on our SAB. Gemma Carville's an amazing geneticist. She's got her own lab now. And outside of the Carville lab, there was a postdoc who just danced her thesis, which I know it sounds very weird, but it's you kind of can't stop watching this video. And so all these brilliant postdocs somehow found time to do a little dance about neurons and exons and genes and poison exons. And poison exons are cool because that's the technology that Stoke is using. So if you just want like 4 minutes of no words and cool dancing about the therapies that will help our kids, links in the show notes, YouTube, about this cool poison exon dance. I'm sorry I went over, but it's been a huge day. Sign up for Citizen. Keep our friends at RegEl and Praxis and Stoke and Penn and Ben's family and Ben's daughter Lulu, who has SCXBP1, in your prayers. And go to a fundraiser and be hopeful and be excited. This has been an incredible week for SYNGAP.